So I was on the Bleacher Report app, and on the Bleacher Report app, they have community sections. And I went to the college football community section, and I asked people to give me some of their sleeper teams heading into the upcoming 2022 college football season. And there were a good amount of people who had Mississippi State on there. And I was really surprised that people would consider Mississippi State to be a sleeper team, because I love Mississippi State because I'm a big fan of Mike Leach. Mike Leach is the most entertaining coach in all of college football. The dude talks about weddings. He was just on a Barstool Sports podcast that I watch. I just love listening to Mike Leach talk. If Mike Leach ever retires, I hope that he ends up going into broadcasting, or they end up giving him his own podcast, because anytime there's a Mike Leach interview, press conference, or him being featured as a guest on somebody's podcast, I just love listening to Mike Leach talk. And I'm a big fan of what he's done so far at Mississippi State, because when he first got hired, there were many people saying that he wasn't going to have that much success, and I was going back and forth with those pundits. They were saying that his air raid offense isn't going to last long in the SEC. He never had a good defense anywhere he has went. But you go into this year, I can understand why so many people can view this football program as a sleeper team this year, because first of all, they went 7-6 last year. They got 3 wins against Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Auburn, which I think people gave them a fair shot to beat Auburn, but I don't think too many people expected them to beat Texas A&M or Kentucky. Their over-under win total going into this year is 6.5. And their out-of-conference schedule is pretty easy. You have Memphis. You have to go on the road to Arizona State, which that game could be a toss-up in a sense, because even though Mississippi State is probably the best team on paper heading into that matchup, this is an Arizona State program that has had a pretty good recruiting class. They've been really active in the transfer portal, so that could be a little bit of a trap game for the Bulldogs. Then you have Bowling Green and another school called ETSU. Don't know what that stands for. And then your conference schedule begins. Now, you should be able to go 3-0 or 4-0 in your out of conference, okay? Then you're going to have to be able to get a couple of big wins in your division. You're going to have to see if you can beat LSU. You have to play them on the road. You got Texas A&M. They're going to be tough. Arkansas. I think Arkansas is being heavily overlooked this year. You have to go on the road to Kentucky, Alabama. You got Auburn. You got Georgia. Then you have to travel to face your arch nemesis, the Ole Miss Rebels, on the road in Ole Miss. So this is a pretty tough conference schedule that Mississippi State has. However, like last year, they were able to win a couple of games that nobody expected them to win. And I think they could probably do the same thing this year. I don't think the gap in the SEC West is as big as what people make it out to be. Of course, you have Alabama up there. Alabama is the cream of the crop, without a doubt, not denying that. But other than Alabama, you ask people who you think is going to be second place in this division behind Bama, and there's a lot of answers that are all over the place. So why couldn't it be Mississippi State? You have a lot of returning production coming back on the offense. You have Will Rogers, who was one of the best quarterbacks statistically in college football last year. He threw for 4,739 passing yards, 36 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, while completing 73.9% of his passes. Your running back group is pretty good. Jaquavius Marks is your all-purpose back. He can do it all. He can catch out of the backfield. He's also really good when you want to hand him the football off. You have Dylan Johnson there. Both of those guys are coming back. Your wide receiver position is probably your biggest question mark, okay, because you lost your leading wide receiver, Makai Polk, to the NFL. But you do have Jaden Wiley, who's going to probably take over that wide receiver run spot. He had 55 receptions for 628 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns last year. But who's going to step up after him? A couple of guys who stood out during spring that Mike Leach talked about was Antonio Harmon. He praised him for his physicality. As a matter of fact, he said that he would appreciate if if the other wide receivers had his physicality as well. You had Rufus Harvey. Both of those guys had pretty solid springs. You got Robert Thomas there, 18 catches for 252 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. The wide receiver position, I'm not going to be too concerned about. I think that Mike Leach is going to be able to sprinkle a little bit of Mike Leach magic, and I think that the wide receiver position should still be pretty solid. The offensive line should be pretty good, even better than last year. Their offensive line has a good amount of talent there, a solid amount of experience. But why I'm pretty excited about this program and why so many people are looking at Mississippi State of being a sleeper in the SEC this year is because of how good this defense is. This defense is really phenomenal, okay? As a matter of fact, this may be the most talented defense that Mike Leach has ever had. Not just at Mississippi State, but in all of his years coaching, I don't think he's ever had a defense that has had not only this much talent, but this much depth. When you look at the defensive line, Nathan Pickering had 4 sacks last year. You got Randy Charlton, Jordan Davis there. So you have a really good amount of talent and depth there. Linebacker Tyrus Wheat had 46 tackles, 7 sacks, which led the team, 2 pass deflections and an interception. Nathaniel Watson, 83 tackles, 5 sacks. You got Jet Johnson. He led the team in tackles. He also had an interception, a forced fumble, and a couple of fumble recoveries. And the secondary is also pretty good as well. Somebody who really has stood out to me has been Emmanuel Forbes. He had 59 tackles, which was 4th on the team. He also had 3 interceptions and a couple of pass deflections. So when you look at Mississippi State, this is definitely a team that could end up surprising many people because, listen, we know what this offense is going to do. We know that this offense is still going to be really productive. They're going to put up a lot of yards and a lot of points. Even if you do have questions about how much depth they have at wide receiver going into this year, you still should expect at least 2 or 3 guys to emerge in this passing game. I really think that Jaden Walley has the potential to become one of the best wide receivers in this conference. And overall, they're at 6.5 wins, okay? We already expect them to probably pretty much go 4-0 because of how weak their out-of-conference schedule is, pending that they're able to beat Arizona State on the road, which I think that they should be able to do. And they also are capable of being able to steal a couple of games. Like I said, LSU is a team that could go either way. This is a team that could end up being just as good as Alabama, or they're a team that could be a little bit in the middle of the pack, slightly above average at 8 wins. I think that that's a winnable game. I also think they have a great chance of being able to beat Texas A&M, Arkansas. The only team I don't really think that Mississippi State has a great chance at beating is Alabama and Georgia. But other than those 2 opponents, I think that they have a pretty good shot at being able to win the majority of their conference matchups. So they can go ahead and get a couple of wins, or they're able to steal a couple of games that they did last season. I don't see no reason why this team can't pop off and couldn't potentially end up winning 9 games, maybe, probably 8. They went 7-6 last year in year 3 for Mike Leach. So I think that Mike Leach has done a really good job with this program. I'm really excited to see what the Bulldogs are going to do. This definitely is a team that could surprise a lot of people this upcoming college football season.